Hello, I've been tagged by Steve from the Pax-A-Lot channel to recant my worst backpacking trip ever. Um, I don't know that any backpacking trip is a bad time compared to being at work, but there was one in particular I remember that everything seemed to go wrong. And I usually don't have equipment problems. I go pretty well prepared. I've been in scouts and suffered enough to know the value of a good sleeping bag, etc. So when I had things go really wrong, it wasn't necessarily gear related, which was strange. But if nothing else, maybe this will prepare you for a bad trip that will come, no matter how well you prepare, and don't let it get you down, and you can look back on it and laugh perhaps a long time afterward. I was remembering a trip I had to the Uintas before I started making videos years ago. I like to walk my dog, and he will pull on his chain and literally pull me around the neighborhood. And I thought, I'll take him with me, and he can pull me up the mountain. This will be great. So I thought I'll take him with me. I also was planning to take my son, but he had something come up at the last minute, and I had actually packed kind of for two. I forgot to take his dried meals out of my pack and a couple of things, and I just headed off to the mountains. This was a year when we had bad fires. California had bad fires in Oregon, and all their smoke blew into Utah, and we had our own fires to go with it. And I remember when we were up on the Baldies, you couldn't see from one baldy to the next. It was that bad. The smoke was just terrible. Well, I started off and got to the trailhead with my dog, and we set off around Leidy Peak. This was sometime in the spring, just when they'd opened up the roads. You could get in there. There were still snowdrifts everywhere, but for the most part, weather was supposed to be good, although the Uintas make their own weather. Anyway, we started off through Leidy Peak, going through the around the south side of the Baldy, because that's the only way I'd been before. And we started going around the Baldy, and my dog was deciding it was time to chase sage grouse. So I hadn't fit keeping him on the trail. And then as we got around the Baldy, he discovered elk droppings, and apparently elk droppings to a dog are like candy. So all he wanted to do was eat elk droppings. As a matter of fact, all the dog food I packed in, he didn't touch a bite of it. And we got around the Baldy onto the west side of Leidy Peak, and he just decided he was done walking. He said, I've walked too far. There's nothing I can smell up here or chase. This is boring, and he just sat down. So I had to drag his bum all over that mountain, drag him behind me while I was packing and pack, and we had probably 40-50 mile an hour winds blowing in our faces. So it was very difficult to hike, not to mention the altitude and the smoke made it so hard to breathe. I was wondering if I was going to make it. Then just as we're getting over to the next basin where Wild Lake is, a giant storm cloud came over the peak, and it was moving fast, and it was dark, and my dog did not want to move. And I said, we're not camping on top of this Baldy in these winds with nowhere to put a tent. We got to go, puppy. And I didn't have a coat on at the time. I had it with me and whatnot, but I was not going to stop for anything. We had to beat that cloud and get down that hill to that basin. We got moving, and I drug him, and we got moving, and it hailed on us, and it hailed and rained, and I mean, we were soaked. And it wasn't that cold because the wind was pretty warm, but we were soaked. It was hail, and we just kept moving, and that kept us warm. We got down to Wild Lake there, and it was just getting kind of dark, and we slapped up the tent real quick and got inside, and I thought I heard a voice, and I thought, wow, I'm really losing it. I'm hearing people. There was no one there. There was no tracks in the snow we'd gone through. There was no way anyone was in there. And sure enough, I poked my head out of the tent, and this guy is coming down the hillside from the Gabbro Pass. It was an older man, 60s, 70s. At the time, he had a pair of shorts on, a light jacket, and a light pack. And he was bleeding from his knee. He came down, and it turns out he had stopped at the Leidy Peak Trailhead the same as I, but he'd gone around the north side of the Baldy, which was shorter. I didn't know that. And he'd gotten ahead of me, actually. And so he wasn't dragging a dog. He got up to the pass and realized it was full of snow, and had fallen and trying to get through the rocks and hurt himself. And as he was coming back down, he ran into me. Well, apparently he had some sons or relatives in the White Rocks Lake area he was supposed to meet with. And there was no way he was making that this late in the day. And he had injured himself and couldn't get through. And he had a tarp, a little pad to sleep on, and some tortillas and salsa with him. That was it. That's all he had with him. Well, I always pack a 3-person tent because I like it, and I had my son was supposed to come, and I had his food with me, so I had food and a place to stay for the guy, and he stayed with me in the pup, and I had to keep holding my dog's collar all night so he wouldn't jump over and eat him. So we got through the night, and I showed him on the maps where you could get around the pass through the rock short on top, not much of a hike, and get past the snow. So he was grateful, and he left early in the morning. And then I had to get my gear together, dry it out, pack up to the same place, and my dog has never been over rocks like that. He was not happy. So I had to pick his fat belly up and set him on each rock and climb until we got up over it, and then he was okay. Well, we finally got to Dead Man Lake and our camping spot, and we were set. And I was anxious to get fishing and have a little fun for a change. So I got my raft out, and I went out and rafted around the lake, and he would follow me. My dog would follow me around the lake and bark as I rafted around. And we got back to camp, and I said, okay, I'm gonna make sure I'm leaving your collar off here. You're unchained. I said, if you run away, I'm leaving you here in the mountains. I'm not coming after you. And he stayed by me the whole time, which was crazy, because I let him out around home, and he will run around the neighborhood, and I'll have to chase him down. Anyway, this fun dog of mine, he would like to go in and out of the tent, and he would scratch on it to get in and out while I was taking a nap. Well, that ruined the screen, so we had to live with mosquitoes every night, and I was getting real tired of it. So finally, we got done, and I decided I'd had enough fun, and we hiked out that day, a day early, and thought we'd stay with my dad in town just to rest. We hiked ourselves back out okay. We got to my truck, and I noticed that the dome light was on. In my old truck, the door didn't lock real well, and if you tried to open it, the dome light would come on. Well, someone had tried to break into it, couldn't get in, and the battery was dead. So I was excited about that, and I had taken my vehicle key off of my key ring and took it with me and left the rest of the keys locked in the truck, so I didn't have to pack a bunch of keys around the mountains. Well, guess which key was missing when I got back to the truck? Somewhere in the mountains is a Nissan pickup key. So if you ever find it, that's where it came from. Well, I had no way to start my truck and a dead battery. So to say I was upset would be an understatement. I ended up disabling my steering column and getting a screwdriver and just cranking it past and getting it to start. So I never used a key after that. It would work with anything. Anyway, I tried to get it started, but it wouldn't start because the battery was dead. Luckily, some teenagers just showed up with their car, and they were able to give me a jump start. And so I got me and the dog in, and we drove down toward Vernal. And just as we're getting around the point of the mountain there to go down, there was a DNR officer at our Forest Service, and thankfully he didn't say anything about the screwdriver in my ignition, but he did say that the road was on fire down below us, and we were going to have to sit there for a couple hours while it burned over the road before he would let us go into town. So we sat there, and finally got down and went into town and stayed at my dad's, and I just had to laugh because sometimes these trips, they just turn out how they're going to turn out no matter how well you prepare. But I I'm glad that I learned from it and didn't get discouraged, and you'll probably find one of those trips too. But just make sure when you go out and have your own camping adventure that you record it or write it down, because you'll want to remember it and share it and remember what you learned from it. Have a good trip.